agreed to, and I call the honourable member for North Sydney.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I just rise to speak in support again of this amendment as proposed by the member for Kylea, because I just want to make the point that, to my understanding, is that small business under the ATO Act at the moment is defined as a business that has a turnover of less than $10 million a year. The reality of defining a business by what it turns over as opposed to who it employs is something that is a long-established principle when it comes to business operating principles in this country. Knowing how much business has evolved in the course of the last 3 decades, and having come from a business background where I have worked in businesses where I employed 50 people, 60 people, but my turnover was less than $10 million, I just would again appeal to the government that the definition of small business within this amended legislation is actually not consistent with the way a business brain runs in terms of its connection to revenue and turnover. So I commend the member for bringing forward this amendment to lift it from 15 employees to 50. I would argue that is still a very blunt measure, because just because you employ people doesn't mean you have the productivity to go with them. You're not necessarily generating the revenue. I also note that the member from Wentworth had intended to move an amendment that would see this lifted to 100 employees on the basis, again, of understanding the connection between income, productivity and revenue. And while I accept the answer that the minister has just given, I would, on behalf of the small businesses in North Sydney is the 3rd largest business centre in this country, and it is very true that small to medium-sized businesses are very concerned by this legislation, and those businesses are concerned to understand how they will be defined and captured in it. So, you know, whether it's a garden maintenance business who may actually have a wide footprint, they will therefore fall into this because they have gardening crews that they send out in groups of 3. They don't consider themselves a medium-sized or large business. They consider themselves small. So I echo that here, because as this legislation, assuming the minister's not going to change his stance, as this legislation moves forward into the Senate, I would encourage my colleagues in the Senate and indeed the minister's team to please, just because it says 15 in the Act to date doesn't mean the Act overall is right. And perhaps just as this Act professes to bring employment standards into line with what is currently expected, one of those actions may actually be to bring that definition into line. We can't employ people under 20th century conditions when we've moved into the 21st century. So I just ask that the minister and his team consider that, and my Senate colleagues argue for it. Thank you.